Namaskar, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. I heard so many erudite speakers speaking on how to manage the employee. I like that sentence, trust the employee completely, and that I think is one of the most important principles in mental health. Well, the new normal is a phenomenon which happens every day. It's not something which actually is only post disaster, but it's happening every day. So HR representatives, HR managers actually fear extinguishers. In fact, wiring the person when he leaves home in the pandemic is one of the most important activities, because when we drive a car, it's spontaneous after you have driven the car for more than, say, a few years. And what is very important also is to understand that when you are supposed to be cautious, this thing is not wired at all inside your mind. And so cognitive wiring, as you leave the house, I will follow all protocols. I'll maintain my distance. Even in a trance state, in a very intense discussion with anybody, I'll maintain distance. And if I maintain distance, I'll be all right. I have been vaccinated twice, and I'll be safe. And this is one of the most important cognitive self-talk which HR managers should teach all their employees. Now you'll find different types of employees. So it's important to understand that employees may not be the same. So ultimately, it was fear of the virus, fear of the future, fear of death. I saw a lot of speakers really addressing uncertainty in a very interesting manner. I loved it. I love it. In fact, I still remember after my lectures for various audiences, Corona warriors, frontline staff, patients, doctors, one thing which really hit me hard, and I learned from others how people manage uncertainty as of now. And one thing which hit me hard was the ward boys saying, half of them said they have to work because their husbands are drunkards, but other half said, I find a meaning in life. Mala vatte ki ha punya hi cha kaam hai. This is something which is really very really honorable, and this meaning in life is one of the most important antidotes for in the epidemic. And when we say that, you'll ask me, what is the use for employees? They are not Corona warriors. Yes, but each one of us is a Corona warrior. In fact, we are all writing history. And each one of you who has coped with this for the last 2 years through local innovations inside the house, with your children, will be part of institutional memory. You would share that with your grandkids. Your kids will share that with their grandkids. In 2019 to 21, we did this in our family. We did this. We ate less. We took care of each other. We shared our activities. And this intangible meaning in life is something we all need to pursue. That kills uncertainty. The third thing which I learned from a doctor, a surgeon who was doing his MS, but has never entered the operation theater for 2 years. And the next year he had to give his exams, and he's a surgeon. And I asked him, what makes you work continuous in the COVID ward, though it will not give you any understanding in surgery? He said, so we are at a pause mode. Let me postpone my dream. Let me protect my dream. Let me understand what's happening, and I will bounce back after some time. No worry at all. I'll do what I'm supposed to do, maybe after some time, but at this point of time in history, I would like to do what I think is the best in my understanding for the community, for the society. So again here, he said, dreams have to be protected. We are in a pause mode. We are hiding from the virus, but not hiding from life. And that is something which really hit me hard. A 12th standard student who entered engineering told me that his father lost his job. And his father, as a nice father, came and shared this in the meeting, in the family. He did not come and throw his weight, or did not show anger. He was not explosive. He didn't blame anybody. He said, family, I've lost my job. Let's sit down together and find ways of handling it. And this boy said, I will postpone my 2 semesters, but I'll give tuitions and earn something for the family. This is what happens. Never waste a crisis, said the great Winston Churchill. So uncertainty can be actually worked through different motivations which arise because of culture, because of family, because of race, because of nature, because of education, so many other things. So there's a plethora of interventions against uncertainty. One intervention may not work. One thing I liked about the earlier speakers was keep yourself engaged. And that is one of the most important ways of beating fear and beating uncertainty. Now, this is a poster you should put in your offices, because it's so difficult to share feelings, especially men, not women. Very difficult. This is a poster you need to really keep it in your office, and this poster is self-explanatory. Well, one important understanding for all of you, the difference between this pandemic and other disasters are, well, in every disaster where I've worked, people said it's all about God. Sab kuch upar wale ke haath. And this is not about God. When people from science told priests, sadhus, mullahs, and maulavis, they closed down all their religious structures. This is a different disaster. In an earthquake, the impact phase is for a few minutes. In a cyclone, maybe a few hours, few days. In a flood, again, few days. The impact phase decides the psychological consequences in a disaster. There could be a pre-impact phase, the impact phase, immediate post-impact phase, and late post-impact phase. This impact phase is going on for the last 20 months, almost 2 years. Almost 2 years. So longer the impact phase, higher will be the consequences. Huge numbers. When the numbers are huge, empathy goes down because everybody is troubled. There's nobody in India who has not lost one person, either a family or a friend or an acquaintance. Isolation, you can't take care of your loved ones. You can't be in the hospital. You can't escort him to the loo. You can't feed her. You can't kiss her. You can't hold her. So you are isolated away from your loved ones. And the impact phase is very long. Apart from being isolated under the long impact phase, it's invisible virus. So the fear again is more. There is a mental health epidemic beneath the surface on the earth, including the country. And COVID terrorists, of course, those who were black marketeers, those who promoted a lot of vaccine hesitancy, and they all were COVID. Now, one research slide. What works across the world? Networks. I liked what Lawrence said. You can go and network, there's a launch, but social networks and perception of safety are the two important critical variables which are helping people across the world. Now, a lot of people, after the second vaccine, they want to unwind just like that. I mean, immediately they would want to rush out of the cage. They say, I would want to go to Kasol. Why Kasol? You can actually go to Karjat. Or if they want to go to the base camp Everest, they can actually go to Kalsubai Park. Well, when these things are happening, what is very important to understand is when you unwind or when your employees unwind, ask them to start slowly with the neighbors, with the friends, little joys, with nature, but not really run out of the cage and really hurt themselves very badly. There's 5 important things of handling stress, which each one of us should understand, is we all have stress. I have stress with the number of patients I have. Some of you would have stress at the salary cuts you have had. Deal with it directly. If I have a salary cut, what should I do? Should I follow the principles of minimalism? Should I actually cut down my expenses? Deal with it directly, because you don't deal with it very, very directly. And teaching your employees to articulate that and help them find answers to that without playing a Nirupa Roy, without playing a Gurudat, is so important. So finding solutions should be an activity by the senior managers with the younger managers, and that as a focus group chat or even a casual conversation with Gappa is important. So sometimes you can't deal with it. I mean, it really nags you. Dissolve it. Best thing is exercise dissolves fat, fears, tears, and anger. And black dog is the most important thing which you need to consume. And if I ask you guys, you're going to say it's whiskey. It's not whiskey. Black Dog is a 4-minute film by the World Health Organization, which states that exercise is an antidepressant. Exercise really dissolves stress. If you really still are troubled, deflect. In the sense, share the responsibility of the stress. Don't be Hercules holding the entire earth on his shoulders. And don't be that strong man in the house or the strong woman in the house. Mere kandhe pe pura parivar chalta hai. No. And for this, distract. Maybe go out and do a lot of things really which distracts. And that is also important to move away from stress. Or break the stress into 10 parts. Like, for example, my son did not get into IIT or an engineering college, break it. What should we do? Well, I don't want to go into the past. I don't want to shout at him that he did not pay attention to his JE, etc., etc. I would say break it in small parts. Let's look ahead, because Shah Rukh Khan said, हम उनमें से हैं जो पीछे झांक के नहीं देखते. So break the stress into small things. Let it disintegrate and tackle little by little is extremely important. Now, I still remember an HR manager was faced by a boy, young 21-year-old lad in a retail firm with a panic attack. He started breathing excessively. He was panting, and environment around became very panicky. And then they took him to a doctor. The doctor said, nothing's wrong with him. It's not heart. It's not body. It is a panic attack. Panic attack is a truism. It's a realism, which is one of the most important consequences of the pandemic. And the HR man said, you can stay at home for some time. And he stayed at home for some time. He came back treated, completely better. He was good for 1 month and he had another panic attack again in the office. So what happens in a panic attack? The frequency of the episodes go down. The duration and the intensity of the episodes go, but he can still get one. So what happens? If it's a panic attack, don't worry, give him water, give him coffee, calm him down, ask him to come back tomorrow, not stay at home, and have a mental health policy in every organization. Very few people have a mental health policy, and the mental health policy needs to be inclusive. So there are sleep issues. Sleep hygiene is a very important educative chat which managers need to have with the young boys and girls. But managers themselves tell me that they have to work longer hours because online takes a much longer time. What you do in 8 hours, people do it in 12 hours. And though there are nice things being said by all managers, there is some amount of brutalism in corporates where the manager above is also very stressed. He's not able to become vulnerable and share. There has to be support group activities for managers themselves. There has to be support group activities at least once a month for senior managers, for HR directors, to help them with their own feelings. And the support group activities can only deal with expression of feelings, expression of vulnerability, and sharing of things which really worked in your organization. That really will help everybody around. So lack of concentration, again, a function of sleep, again, a function of anxiety, again, a function of depression, irritability, grief among those who really have lost their loved ones, and bad memories, because post-traumatic stress disorder would be, I was in the ICCU, I saw people dying. Those images of the bodies taken away from the ward is fresh in my mind. I see somebody on the ventilator. The image is, I come back home and I get those images, which means what? There's an image, it becomes imagery, and along with the feelings, it becomes memory. And when the feelings are very intense, it becomes intrusive memory, which comes to you again and again. So bad memory is also something which is very, very important. And this is something I need to really explain to you. Empathy happens when a few people die. An entire building is empathetic, entire community, entire family. When a lot of people die, there's apathy. And there's antipathy. I still remember. A friend told me that two neighbors have died, and he just cannot feel sad about them. And he said, is it right? I told him, it's not right. It's when you're sad and scared, you can become numb, you can become obtunded. And when you become numb, empathy is blocked. Because you start thinking of yourself in their feet. And when you start thinking of yourself in the feet, the fear is intense. And the fear is intense, empathy goes down. Apathy actually supervenes. Antipathy, I still remember this true incident. A young lady was 48 years old, was going to hospital because her brother was in the hospital post-COVID. Beyond 15 days, he was on oxygen. And the doctor had asked him to come to see him because he was post-COVID. And when she wore her attire and she was about to leave, the two kids said, "You should not go, Mummy. We are concerned about your health." She said, "I want to go and see my brother." They said, "Nothing doing. We are concerned about you because if you get infected, we'll get infected. If something happens to me, what about us?" She had to sit down and talk to them. "If your brother gets ill sometime later, will you go and help your sister?" And the sister said yes. So antipathy is also seen in this entire disaster, and they can actually cope this. You know what, my dear friends? Put this as a poster in your offices. You need equanimity, emotional regulation for empathy, but at the same time, you need sadness for the empathy to come up. And when you say this, please tell everybody in your organization, mind is not made of iron or steel. It's made of neurons. There's no strong man or strong woman on this earth. Resilience is an ongoing process, and resilience is unequal. You may be resilient in some areas, you may not be resilient in all areas. So it's important to understand that there's no strong HR who can take care of the entire organization. An HR director who weeps once in a while in front of employees, a normal HR director. The papa figure is also like us. हमें रोने आता है, उसे भी कभी-कभी रोना आता है. Nothing wrong in that. So those who think that there's a strong man and he can handle everything, he or she may not be very resilient in all situations, and he may not be very resilient at all times. It's something you need to understand. So a little about science. Amygdala is the part of the brain which really helped us during the Stone Age. Fight and flight. The lion came, I killed the lion, but the lion was alive and I ran away. And then slowly, after some time, prefrontal cortex of the human beings grew much more than what chimpanzees had. And the prefrontal cortex actually helps you to have decisive, very, very meaningful and very mindful thinking happens in the prefrontal cortex. So what happens in the disaster? Amygdaloid has become more powerful than the prefrontal cortex, and the fear, fright, freeze and flight has really come up very strongly, to an extent that so many of us have been so scared across time. And meditation and exercise helps. Yoga, I'm not saying this. In the IITB study recently, they found that all the MBA graduates did extremely well in their exams. Their mental health improved, their interpersonal relationship improved because of yoga. I'm not saying this, but the US Navy has asked all its SEALs or its Marines on the ships to practice yoga in their warships. I'm not saying this. Cortisol goes down. What happens in stress? There's a rain of cortisol in the brain. The adrenal gland really plays havoc, and then the stress cycle starts. So meditation exercise brings down the cortisol, amygdala calms down, and the memory centers and the centers which takes decisions improve. So as we see this, again, I would say mind and body are in constant conversation. Equal attention to both helps immunity, health, and equanimity. And if there's somebody who comes to you and says, I don't feel like doing anything, I don't know, it has been there for some time, I really don't know, I was not like this before, tell me what I feel. Believe in him or her. Because depression is basically invisible. Depression, the person who's suffering would only know what is happening in the mind. There is emotional paralysis. The mind becomes as hard as stone, as hard as ice. And when depression is invisible and cunning, we need to believe the person. And the first stop is not yoga and meditation, because first stop is a psychiatrist or a psychologist who can decide whether this is a sprain of the mind or if this is a fracture of the mind. If there's a fracture, you need medication and counseling. The sprain, you need counseling, help, friends, love, affection, etc. Now with the kids, मैं जो कुछ कहूंगा सच कहूं. Please be honest. The kids age appropriate. Don't say nah, nothing is wrong. ना कहाँ होना ना कुछ नहीं होगा यार, आप रहो घर पे, कुछ होने वाला, nothing is going to happen. Be honest with the kids. I still remember these kids who get up at night and cry, and the mother holds him or her tight and she asks him what's happening, and he or she says, I feel everybody will die. And when I intervene, I find there's a lot of chat of COVID in the house. There's a lot of chat about death in the families and death in different families. And there was a lot of fearsome narratives and conversations at the house. And I told the mother, just hug the child and say, we're all safe, we will be safe. And I told the mother that she's going to ask a lot of questions. Answer as many questions as you think it is. And remember, because in COVID, nobody knows what's going to happen, in spite of the fact that all scientists talk different languages. There are 3 or 4 things which are truthful. One is that we could crack the virus code in 1 week and we could get the vaccine in 1 year. So in a situation like this, when you have a democratic meeting inside a family, kids can come up with beautiful innovations to tackle stress. Remember, the simplest minds are the most profound. Don't ignore them. And how will you share them with the kids? Anxious sharing. अरे तुझे पता है सब जगह कोविड तो बाहर क्यों जाता है, बैठ जा इधर घर पे. Factual sharing. अरे सब जगह कोविड है बेटा, कहीं मत जा, ये वायरस है, खतरनाक है. Helpless sharing. अभी क्या होएगा रे, अभी क्या होएगा रे, by my God, अभी तू भी मेरे को तकलीफ देता है. Helpless sharing. Empowered sharing. There is a problem, and we will take care of it. And empowered sharing only will happen when you deal with your feelings appropriately. When you don't deal with your feelings appropriately with your friends, with your colleagues, with your HR director, with your CEO, or even with the security guard. I greet my security guard much more stronger than my CEO. Because CEO walks straight and says, good morning. Security guard shares something about his own self, his own family in 1 or 2 minutes. Other day, security guard says, sir, hamara beta is serving in the army in an infantry. And then I went on chatting. I said, how do you manage your work as you are at the gate of the hospital? And he said something very interesting. मैंने अपने आप को कहा कि मैं अपना काम अच्छे से करूंगा. जब हम अच्छे से काम करते हैं ना डॉक्टर साहब, हमने सुना इम्यूनिटी बढ़ती है और अच्छे से काम करने से स्वास्थ्य भी बढ़ता है. इम्यूनिटी एंड हेल्थ बोथ इंप्रूव. यू थिंक इट्स इज इट राइट? And you'll get some fundamental wisdom from people across the border. Hierarchy makes no difference in the COVID era. Probably somebody intelligent and somebody at the top of the pile may give us a lot of statistics, but wisdom comes from everywhere. Is something which we all need to really think. So these are the 4 things which we started during the early pandemic. Create a routine, but don't make it an army regimented routine where sometimes it so happens that the father says, Harish Shetty had come to our organization. He said, routine, 5 baje udhenge, 5:30 baje exercise karenge, 6 baje khayenge breakfast. I said, no, create a framework. You might have an exercise in the morning. The son may want to have an exercise in the evening, but it's okay. But create a routine. It really helps break stress. Wearing great colors when you're down is very, very interesting. Conversation with your safe space. Safe space would mean where you can be emotionally nude. Where people say, "Arey, meri bhi phatti hai, tumhari bhi phatti hai, hum saath mein kuch na kuch karenge," and celebrate whatever you have. For 1 year, I did not have fish. For Mangalore Shetty, not to have fish is like a nuclear bomb on his head. But nothing happened because the mind trained itself to accept whatever is in the plate and celebrate what you have. Is a philosophy which you need to really say. Well, swasthya is important. Sambandh is more important. Swavlamban is much more important. But samjhota means something very important. Well, a lady said she wants to get vegetables by touching the vegetables during the lockdown. I said, don't do that. Let the vegetable come on the phone. No. Jab tak main haath nahi lagata, tab tak mujhe nahi acha lagta. And she brought COVID. And swasth means taking care of yourself, which is very important. Now the family cannot be happy without the family mother being happy. The spouse, the emotional caregiver in the family is largely the women in the country. I always say that the country actually is run by mothers, constables, and teachers. So what is very important is, tell all the mothers, tell all the women in your organization, do not play the superwoman role. Well, त्याग के घोड़े से उतर जाओ, अपनी जिंदगी की दोनों बाजू एक साथ मत चलाओ. Don't burn your candle on both sides. Tell them to get down of the break and ask them whether they're a martyr or a manager. I still try this experiment in different groups of women, especially school teachers. And I said that you get up in the morning, sit down on the sofa, and allot activities. The one family came very badly and very strongly against the mother. It is not in our family. The second family agreed and they did a lot of things together. But the mother was not happy because when others entered the kitchen was dirty. Kitchen, in Marathi they say, bahut sara pasara hua tha. And they were very unhappy. And the mother said, I don't want to do it. I want my house spick and span. I understand you will say that I'm a superwoman. I try to be the best employee. I try to be the best mother. I try to be the best daughter-in-law. I try to be the best brother. I will do it. I mean, you can't push this. But I told her, imperfect home is a healthy abode. Imperfect kitchen is a happy house. Imperfect mother is a happy wife. And an imperfect wife is a happy marriage. When this sinks in that I should not chase perfection, consistency is better than perfection. And it's okay. I do not have to have my house in a display mode. I do not have to have every dish as if it's made by a chef. And that's where joy automatically improves. My dear friends, let me say that I congratulate you for facing this mishaps for a very long time and allowing and following protocols. Congratulations. My best wishes to all those who have been infected and have recovered and they're slowly recovering today. But my condolences to those who have had deaths in the family. That is something I really feel sad about. And I would say that at that point of time, I still remember this business. My father is a pillar of the family. He still takes care of everybody. Nothing happens to him. And again, I tell them a building does not stand on one pillar. building with several pillars. So there are many pillars in the house: the big pillar, the strong pillar, the small pillar, the intermediate pillar, and each pillar can really help each other. And that's the beauty. And if you consider the grief is a complex activity, and each one of us has actually a role in helping the other, irrespective of age. So maturity might help. But let me tell you, I lost my mother's sister on the 6th day of the disaster, and I went to cremate her. With my nephew, everybody else was positive. So we were both crying like little children, and we were both consoling each other. An 18-year-old consoling somebody who was at least 3 times their age. So no strong pillar. The building does not stand on one pillar. There are many pillars, and that is something you need to understand. Crying together, heal together. And there's a famous saying from the United State of Uttar Bharat, UP. यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ उत्तर भारत, जो बह गया वो पानी है, जो रह गया वो जहर है. तो teach your employees to cry as and when they can, and especially teach all your vice presidents, men, and all the HR directors who are men on the screen. When I just came back, teach them how to cry, and they'll be much better off, not only in the pandemic but all their life, and they'll be much more effective in their work as compared to what they were. And as I say this, I said tears are liberating, and never ever stop them. My dear friends, time is not always the best healer. I still remember this beautiful anecdote. When I worked at Latur after the year of the disaster, there was a meeting held by one of the chief secretary's IAS officers. He passed away recently, some years ago. He said, oh, we have built villages again, and the massive rehabilitation package has been transacted, and mental health time will be the best healer. And I told him, I was younger than now, 1994. And I told him, sir, if this fan above your head hits your head, unfortunately, I wish it should not, and you start bleeding, will you say time is the best healer? No, time is not always the best healer. And remember, my dear friend, what did we inherit before the disaster? 2019, the Minister of Health and Welfare said 1 out of 7 Indians were mentally ill. 20 crore Indians are mentally ill. At the same time, 2019, NCRB figures, National Crime Research Bureau figures, said 1 out of 4, at least 1 out of 4 people who die by suicide are daily wage laborers. 1 out of 3 reasons for ending your life is family problems. And housewives commit suicides much more than single women. We were trained when we were doing MD psychiatry that single women are at risk, but housewives are more at risk. So in this context, you can't have samay se sab kuch hota hai. You need to intervene. You need to identify things early so that people are taken care of. And what are things we need to look at as an HR director, HR manager, or even a manager? That is, if somebody is irritable in the office, somebody's concentration has gone down and he's not able to do his work as well as he can. Somebody who feels sad and lazy, comes late every day, not because of the train not being there, but he's slow in his body. There is psychomotor slowing, retardation, or there is psychomotor agitation. If somebody is feeling, मेरे वजह से बहुत production कम हुआ, मेरे वजह से यार targets नहीं meet हो रही है, feeling, blaming himself for the work. Somebody feeling hopeless, worthless, talks about death in an indirect way. COVID मुझे उठा ले जाना था, and ये सब होता तो बहुत अच्छा होता है. COVID should have taken me away. And मुझे मरना, मुझे भागने की इच्छा होती है. I feel like running away, and that is one of the most. If we see any of the signs, and if you even suspect there are any signs without clear evidence, mental health checkup is a must. And in all your organizations, when you have a checkup of your employees, add a mental health checkup also. Now, a mental health policy, inclusive, not to throw the employees away, but to help them recover and come back to your offices. And so time is not always the best healer. Now, when I say this, I always would want to add that the irritable family is a difficult family. And what happens here? I still remember a lot of fear of the COVID virus converted itself into irritability. And each one would not share their fears with each other. And when they did not share their fears with each other, they were all irritable. And in many families, I just asked them to sit down together and put down all the fears they have, all the concerns they have. When they shared those small chits, they found each one of them was scared of the virus, scared of death, and scared of the future. And they started laughing when they did that exercise. A lot of irritability went down. Sometimes irritability is also because one person being depressed, he's not aware he's depressed, because depression is invisible. Fracture is visible. Depression can be invisible. You may not cry. There's a famous quote here. People who cry may not always be depressed, but people who are depressed may not choose always to cry. So it's important to suspect and get a mental health checkup done. Sometimes a PHQ-9, patient health questionnaire 9, can be used by HR employees with their HR directors or HR managers with their employees to just screen people for depression. And maybe the diagnosis can be confirmed after they're examined by a mental professional. So my dear friends, as I slowly close, what's important? The journey in a globalized world is external. My appraisal, which is important, my increase in salary, designation, my visiting card. The journey during COVID was also internal awareness. खुद को खोने से पहले खुद से मिलना चाहता हूँ. That's what Shah Rukh Khan said to Madhuri Dixit in the film Devdas. Madhuri Dixit says, I don't know if it's Madhuri Dixit or Aishwarya. He says, I want to go and meet one of the two girls, I forget. But she says that my dasi ban kya hoonga. That's not important. But what he says is, khud ko khone se pehle, khud se milna chahta. The journey within. This is a great opportunity for all HR directors to improve their journey within of employees. That does not make them saints, but it makes them effective in their work. It cannot be done by once in a while. A person coming in your organization and saying, apne pitaji ka yaad karo, and they're all crying. I hear this all the time. If they cry little by little, day by day, they'll be much better than crying one day after remembering their father or the mother. This is an equanimity and culture of the organization. A lot of HR directors should look at managing